So I was on the subway, and it's about 9:15 in the morning. It's very, very crowded, and I'm heading into Manhattan from Brooklyn. And there was no place to sit, so I was surfing the subway, which is one of my favorite things to do. Just see if I can stay upright instead of falling on my face or my butt or some other part of me. Um, and there was this woman and a child. I think it was her daughter. And they were standing by the door to the train. And we were pretty close together because it was very crowded. And I kept seeing this little girl. She was about 8 years old, and she kept looking at me. And she was curious. And I see the moment that she notices that my arms are shorter than hers are, and they're shorter than the other people around me. And she's looking at me, and at first I think she was just looking at me because I was the nearest person. And I have a really big purse, and I had some weird things in it, like a book and a random spyglass and odd things in my bag. So I think that's what caught her attention. But when she was sneaking glances at me and it registered that I was different, her eyes got all big, and she was polite, so she didn't want her reaction to be obvious. So she kind of looked away, and then she looked back, and I was kind of watching this, and I smiled at her, just to let her know it's okay. It didn't bother me that she was noticing, and I just smiled at her. And her mother's not paying attention. She's just focusing on getting from point A to point B with the child, which is seems to be an impressive feat in New York City. And this little girl, she kept for about 5 stops trying to distract herself and then looking at me and then trying to distract herself and then looking back. And every time she looked at me, I just tried to make it look like from my face that I wasn't bothered by the attention. I was approachable and it was okay. The side note there is, naturally I kind of have what I believe is called resting bitch face. So when I first moved to New York, a friend of mine warned me that I needed to develop a subway face. And I kind of already have one by default. Which, I mean to say, I don't automatically look very approachable or very friendly. So, I was trying to consciously overcome this natural expression because it can be kind of severe. And let me see if I could do it for you. And remember, this is my default expression. I am actually very friendly and I don't mind when people approach me, but my default expression is something like, yep, that's it. That's my default expression. And it's not very approachable. So when this little girl was looking at me, I was trying to keep my face lively and pleasant and not dead-eyed. And finally, one stop before I was going to get off, the train cleared out a little bit more and there was more room. And finally, the little girl, she sort of shuffled over to me. And her mom looks up because she's like, why is my kid moving over away from me? And her mom looks up and she sees me, and I see the mother register that I'm different and register that her child is approaching me. And her eyes get bigger and bigger as the little girl is coming towards me. And I see the just horror burbling up inside her and to the surface. And finally, the little girl reaches me, and I smile at her. And she says, "Oh, why is, why are you different?" And I look at her and I said, "Well, what do you mean? Why are my arms shorter than yours?" And she goes, "Yes." And her mother's going, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And kind of trying to laugh, but the mother is trying to figure out how I'm gonna react. And I just smile and I say, "No, it's totally fine. I would love to explain it to you." And so while the mother is watching, I take the little girl's hand, which may have been a little forward of me, but I take her hand and I say, "Okay, so look at her hands. Yours is different than mine. Um, you have 5 fingers, including your thumb, and I only have, well, how many fingers do I have?" And she said, "Wow, you have 4 fingers. You look like a Simpsons character." And I laughed because that's exactly how I've described myself before. And I said, "Yeah, um, when I was born without thumbs." And she goes, "Wow, you didn't have thumbs when you were born? Wow." And she's just amazed and excited. And then I show her my thumb and I say, "Well, when I was a baby, I had some wonderful doctors. They were such good doctors, they were almost like magicians, and they gave me thumbs." And I explained it to her. And I didn't have much time to explain it in bone level detail, but I just described, that I was born different, and this is the way I was born different, and this is what happened. And she just goes, "That's so cool." And her mom is so relieved that I'm not mortified or upset or offended or anything. And so I just said, "Yeah, it is really cool." And then I say, "Oh, this is my stop. Well, have a nice day." And we wave at each other, and the little girl's eyes are fixed on my hand, waving at her. And then she smiles and waves back. And that was the start of my day. It was really nice. This happens more often than you would think. Um, and I actually love it because it gives me an opportunity to show kids that even if someone is maybe different than they are, they're not scary. And they're not unapproachable, and they're not um, afraid of being different either. It's okay to be different. So I really like these interactions. In fact, that's what I love about children, is when I was teaching art workshops to kids, they had so many questions and they were just open about it. And that's part of the spirit of why I wanted to start these videos, because that spirit of being curious, so curious you can't even contain it, and not being afraid that you're going to be not politically correct, or not being afraid that you're going to offend someone. Children don't typically have that filter. That's why, sometimes people say children are so cruel. They're not cruel, they just don't have the same parameters that we adults hold ourselves to and bind ourselves with. And politeness and being politically correct and being respectful are all not bad things, they're good things. But from my perspective, as someone who is often causes those emotions in other people and those cautions, it's not always a good thing. It's taken to an extreme that I think is detrimental to myself and also to other people, because it just prevents getting past it, and it prevents a certain amount of knowledge. If everyone was always afraid of approaching me and talking to me about it, then they wouldn't get to know me, and I would lead a very lonely life. It is just a part of who I am, and if you come up to me and you go, "Wow, you have really short arms. I've never seen anything like that before," which has actually happened to me. I just go, "Yeah, I do." Yeah, that's a part of it. And if they want to know why and want to know more about me, I'm okay with that too. So this morning was really good. I like that. It's about the third time that that's happened with a child on the train since I've moved here. And sometimes you can see a child wants to ask a question, but their parent is like, no, please don't. Please don't embarrass me. And so they don't. But I much prefer it when they do. And I kind of like, I suppose, to ask the question, do you think, any of you, anyone watching this, do you think that we have become too sensitive about our differences? Is there not something that need to be danced around? I'd much rather talk about it. I don't want to ignore something, or I don't want someone to say, she's different, but she's beautiful even though she's different, and she's different in her own way. And I don't want that. I want, she's different. How is she different? How has that affected her? Oh, interesting. I wonder if I'm different in some way that I wasn't aware of before. I bet we're all kind of different in some way that we weren't aware of before. That's what I want. I don't think being so careful and pussyfooting around these things is the smartest way to handle it. But that's kind of strange because my entire life it pretty much was not talked about. And now I'm talking about it all the time. So if you have any questions for me, as always, I'd be happy to answer. And if you have any thoughts on this topic, I would love to hear them or read them, whichever. I just wanted to make a short video today because I had that charming experience, and I will be posting more things. They will not always be about my physical difference necessarily, but my theme will probably remain the same. I want a more open, thoughtful dialogue in the world about our similarities and our differences and the things that are okay. And I want to have a more open discussion about different perspectives. And that actually goes hand in hand with my idea that we're too careful about the things we talk about nowadays, because part of talking about things, even if you go through rudeness and maybe cruelty even, a part of talking about it is developing perspective. And it's not always rosy and charming. I've had people say ridiculously mean things to me. I've had people be very cruel. But that's a part of it. Cruelty is a part of life. And the sooner we recognize that, we get past it and we develop a different perspective, and we're more open to different perspectives. So I'll be talking more about that later. As always, I sort of feel like I'm hiding it, but I'm not trying to. And I will eventually invest in a better camera and get everything in the frame. So, alright, it was nice to see you all again, and please enjoy, come again soon, or something like that. Alright, good night everyone.